Today at House of Hacks, we're going to be continuing looking at the Maker Manifesto. This is day 2 of 3, and we'll be looking at the second of 3 items in the Maker Manifesto. Let's get started. Hi makers, builders, and do-it-yourselfers, Harley here. Today is the second day in 3 days where I want to talk about points out of the Maker Manifesto. This is something that I ran across a couple weeks ago, and it is by Mark Hatch. And he actually has a book called the Maker Manifesto. I haven't read the book yet. I have read a sample chapter and read the 9 main points that he has. And I did find them fascinating, and I do plan on reading the book at some point in the future. I've put it on my reading list. I just haven't had a chance to get to it. I just ran into this a couple weeks ago. But I did want to go through these 9 points in total, 3 each day, because I did find them kind of interesting, and a lot of them align with House of Hacks philosophy that I've been talking about the last week or so. So the 3 words that we want to look at today are learn, tool up, and play. The first word is learn, and the way he defined that is, you must learn to make. You must always seek to learn more about your making. You may become a journeyman or master craftsman, but you will still learn, want to learn, and push yourself to learn new techniques, materials, and processes. Building a lifelong learning path ensures a rich and rewarding making life, and importantly, enables one to share. Now this is interesting because it really fits in nicely with the philosophy for House of Hacks on Educate, where you're always learning, you're always trying to continue on in becoming better at your craft and better at what you're doing both as a maker and as a human. And he talks about the lifelong learning path, and this really fits in nicely with what I talked about the other day too, about that we're all on a creative journey, and where we're at now, hopefully, is not where we are in the future as we continue to learn, continue to develop as humans and as craftsmen. The second point we want to talk about today, which would actually be the 5th word in his manifesto, is tool up. And this says, you must have access to the right tools for the project at hand. Invest in and develop local access to the tools you need to do the making you want to do. The tools of making have never been cheaper, easier to use, or more powerful. Now this is kind of interesting because he is heavily involved in the makerspace movement. And I think a lot of this particular point in his manifesto has to do with the makerspace movement. And in the sample chapter that I read, he had a huge, long list of tools that he considers essential. And it was kind of interesting reading that list because some of them can be kind of pricey. He had things in there like plasma cutters and CNC machines and 3D printers and things that require a bit of investment to have. And I think he's looking at it from a makerspace perspective where you have multiple makers coming together and collaborating, and so they can kind of share and amortize that cost across all of them. But in my own life, I know that this has been something that I've actually kind of focused on. There was a time in my life whenever I started a project, I would always skimp and make do with the tools I happened to have. I'd had a circular saw and a drill and some drill bits, and that was about it at that point in my life. And I really scrimped, and I'm actually kind of surprised at some of the things I made with just those real simple basic hand tools and a few power tools. But there came a point where I kind of got frustrated with the limitations of the tools and the time that it took sometimes to do things by just making do with what I had rather than really having the right tool for the job at hand. And so I made an intentional commitment that when I wanted to work on a project, if I didn't have the right tool for it, I would seriously consider buying the right tool. And that's really made a big difference. Using that, I've bought bandsaw and drill press and a few other fairly large investments specifically for a project that I needed them on. And then once I had them, I found other uses for them. So to some extent, I really agree with this statement, although the big, huge, long list that he has, I think might be pretty, you'd have to have a big shop if it was one person doing it. And the last word we're going to look at today is play. And he defines that as, be playful with what you are making, and you'll be surprised, excited, and proud of what you discover. Now this really goes along with the last line that I close every video with, where I talk about perfection and then I end with fun is. being fun is what you really need to be focused on. And I really believe that making is fun, learning new things is fun, and this really should be something that we should be thinking about, and the attitude we should have towards our making. I think really if you can't have fun with it, if you can't play, then perhaps the way that you're creating is not really who you are intrinsically. And maybe you need to be looking at other ways of creating that you might find more fun. I'd wonder if you don't find making fun in the way that you make, if perhaps you're making for the wrong reasons. Maybe you're doing a certain type of creativity in order to please somebody else rather than to please yourself. And you might want to look at other ways of creating. Not all ways of creating are for everybody, and you need to really find the way that fits you uniquely as a person, and your interests and your skills and what you find fun. So that's the second day of going over the Maker Manifesto. Like I said, there is a book. I'll leave a link to the book, and there's also a sample chapter. I'll leave a link to that down below. And thanks for joining me on the creative journey that we're all on. Until tomorrow, go make something. Perfection's not required, fun is.